microphone. We have right now coming to the mic, we have Wendall Butler from Local 760, the pipe fitters, steam fitters, plumbers from Muscle Shoals. Happy to have the union up in the house. This is a movement of the workers right here. Wendall Butler.
Yeah. Hello, can I lay this thing down? Can you still hear me when I lay this thing down?
I can help you.
Well, maybe I won't even need it. Brothers and sisters, thank you for having me here today. Okay. Gonna make it a little difficult, that's okay. Dear brothers and sisters, thank you for having me here today. I'm Wendall Butler, and I represent the Local 760 Political Education Committee. I'm here today mad as hell. How about you? Yeah. Well, let me hear it. Let me hear it. Are you mad? Yeah. Let me hear it inside. Yeah. We want these greedy Republicans to hear us, and I didn't have nothing to do with electing them. We see what you've done to our state. Let us get right down to the facts. In 2011, despite a $586 million budget deficit, Alabama raised the borrowing limit on its capital investment fund to $400 million. Alabama offers any array of subsidies to corporations that reduce or eliminate almost every major corporate tax. At the beginning of 2015, Governor Bentley proposed a six-bill package called Accelerate Alabama Jobs that included incentives that would replace bond-based subsidies with programs with more tax-based programs. That means you pay more tax money that's going to these corporations. It was an excuse to spend tax dollars to create jobs, but there's no case. It's just to make the rich richer. In 2007, German steel maker Tyson Crump was going to build the largest steel plant in decades. There was $3.7 million up for grabs. The competition between Alabama and Louisiana heated up. Since both states wanted that 2,700 fairly well-paying jobs, the deal included $461 million in upfront grants for state and local governments, and another $111 million in state tax credits and exemptions. Their upfront grants included $314 million for site preparation, $45 million in land acquisition, $25 million over 5 years for training, and $85,000 for applications for free trade zone. Looks like they'd do that, don't it, you? They received tax breaks that covered 20 years of business and personal taxes, 3 years of sales exemptions during construction, 10 years of utility tax exemption, local abatements except for the Education Trust Fund, 30 years of state corporate income credits that could push the ultimate cost of subsidies of more than $1 billion. Over state politicians offered this company $900 billion from the funds to rebuild the Gulf Coast from Katrina and Rita, but they refused the money. They had more morals than our elected state officials. After 3 years, this company went into operation in 2010. In April 2011, the property tax abatement pushed these subsidies over $1 billion. What happened next? The company was sold for $1.5 billion, and the new company owners got to keep all those abatements and incentives that came off the backs of American taxpayers. Okay, Mercedes-Benz was given $300 million in 1995. That's how 1993. That's how far it goes back, which was $200,000 for each of the 1,500 jobs. In 2000, they received another $600 million plus another $119 million. In 2009, they received $11 million property tax abatement. Meanwhile, 10 Walmart locations received subsidies of $49.8 million. In Alabama alone, the Walton family is one of the Walmart chain, is already the richest family in the United States. There's where our tax money is going. It's easy to see our elected officials spend the tax revenue brought in the state. Even now, we've seen $40 million go to Mercedes-Benz less than a month ago. Remington, $12 an hour jobs. How much do we pay for them? What about the Polaris plan? How much are we paying for these jobs when we got rid of 5,000 government working jobs that was already paid for? But you're not paying for it no more because they doing without. Think about this. This, the door, fuels their greed for power and for money. We have seen firsthand in the state that Republicans serve the rich, corporations, not the working class. We are the ones paying for these big corporates to bring their jobs. When they are not responsible for their paying their fair share, those taxes must be paid by the workers. May 20th, 2013, the Fair Campaign Practices Act, SB 445, Senator Brian Taylor, Republican, Prattville, made to where there's no cap on how much money these corporations can pay their state officials seeking elections. They fund these political campaigns with the sole purpose of electing officials putting in the laws and tax exemptions to protect their big money. Now let's talk about Medicare. Now, brothers and sisters, let's put the effects of the Republican failed economics out front. It looks like another crash after the crash of 1989 savings and loan, 2008 crash of the banking system, and all the red states we see going down the tubes from the same failed down treacle economics, ripping money from vitally important services to have more to give away to corporate greed. It's been a trickle-down disaster. Greed is their God. Now let's talk about Medicaid. Bailey himself says just over 1 million of Alabama's 5 million people, many are poor, and use this program. Yet he refused to extend this program. Expanding Medicaid meant over $100,000 but would have health care. Medicaid would also been fully funded by the federal government. I pay my taxes on union insurance of Medicaid expansion, $50 a month. You know, since there was no expansion, I wonder where my money goes. Probably the same place them jobs would have been created, somewhere else. Alabama State Representative Steve Claus, Republican Arizona, said, "We're the first station in the nation that finally says we're going to do away with the Medicare system. See, it's worse than you thought it was." Then the House voted to cut $529 million from Medicare, knowing what the end results would be. State Health Officer Don Williams said the cuts would be compounded because state dollars are being used to draw federal money away, which would end the state program, resulting in loss of insurance for 1 million Alabamians, many of which are elderly and poor children. They know how many it affects. It affects children and low-income pregnant women, the disabled, nursing home residents, and many more. 53% of the births in Alabama are paid by Medicaid. There is no pro-life in these Republicans. Pro-life means you want these women and babies to have that care they deserve, even if they have no insurance. Pro-life doesn't mean throwing grandma off the cliff by forcing her out of the retirement community simply because they do not want to fund Medicare. Thank you. Grandma should not have to suffer. She worked her whole life and paid into Medicare to be taken care of, not thrown to the side by these greedy politicians. Yeah. It is how Republican politicians are working out for Alabama. Alabama's the 10th poorest state in the union. We also rank among the lowest educated. Alabama is one of the deepest red states, yet it is also one of the most poverty-stricken states in the nation. Mississippi suffers from the same serious social economics issue. Yeah, we call that Republican failed economics. Let's look at most important thing. Let's look at the most important thing, people. Our children's future, education. Today, to an article on Alabama.com written by Madison Underwood on October 16, 2014. According to the Centers for Budget and Policy Priorities, Alabama has cut pure pupil funding 17.8% since 2008. These made the second deepest cuts to per pupil funding for K-12 in our nation. The state increased its per pupil funding in the current fiscal year by $16. The study notes that increase was far enough to offset the state's 1,144 per pupil cut over the previous years. Alabama is spending $1,128 less per student in fiscal year 15 than it was in 2008. This is the largest deficit in pure student spending in the entire nation, according to the CBP. By the way, the state is the largest employer of minorities. How many state jobs have they cut to pay for corporate welfare? State employees have been cut to the bone and still be continued to cut to the bone because of lack of funding. Surprise? 5,000 government jobs have been cut in Alabama since 2010. I wonder how many jobs they bought with all them billions of taxpayers' money. Did they replace the jobs that we already had and were cut? The government jobs hold more minorities than private sector jobs? Wow, we should have figured. Now, what about mental health for the people who are often in prison? Just hope we can get time to talk about that, because that's a straight line money trail. According to our National Alliance of Mental Health, from 2009 to 2012, Alabama came in the second in the largest budget cuts by percentage in mental health. South Carolina came in first with 39% cut. Alabama was second with 36% cut for mental health. In Alabama, the mental health budget was sustained with federal stimulus dollars to 2009 to 2011. But after they ended, they forgot about to fund that, and they just let it drop. Then can you believe they refused the ACA expansion, which would have funded mental health institutions here in Alabama? Instead, everyone in the state was shut down. TimesDaily.com, June 14, 2015, by Robert Palmer and Lisa Singleton, staff writer, says, budget cuts could devastate mental health services. Y'all need to read that article. It says the mental health budget has only increased by 4% in the last 16 years. 16 years. There you have it. This is how our state works. We work every day to pay all the taxes. Corporations get all the tax money. Then they turn right back around and put the money right back in the pockets of our elected officials. And thanks to Republican policy that took down our campaign loans, giving them free rein to buy off our representatives, and then our representatives work for them, not us. Look at how they are helping the people in the state. Who do they represent? It's hard to see who they represent unless you follow the money. The tax burdens in the state, in this country, have been pushed on the backs of American workers. They continuously give away our hard-earned tax dollars to these already rich corporations. Do they call themselves pro-life Christian? Do they call themselves pro-life Christian? But that's really just a cover for the fact they are greedy and power-hungry. Pro-lifers would not expect our poor children to suffer on the street, unable to see a doctor. Pro-lifers would not expect to see our elderly tossed in the street and ripped from their health insurance. My idea of pro-life is making sure all women, children, elderly, hopeless person can have access to food, shelters, doctors, and the medicines they need to live. Mr. Bentley, I thought you was a physician, not an undertaker. I mean, you are draining the blood out of Alabama, replacing it with your cold black fluid of desperation. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for coming out and standing for a real working class people who had enough and have suffered enough under trickle-down disaster. Solidarity. United we stand, divided we beg. Solidarity.